So good afternoon. Welcome to Preservation Connecticut Spring 2021 series talking about preservation, our noontime chats about everything preservation. I'm Jane Montanaro, Executive Director of Preservation Connecticut, and I'm delighted to be your host today. So Preservation Connecticut is the statewide private nonprofit historic preservation organization. We were founded in 1975 by special act of the Connecticut General Assembly as the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation. We preserve, protect, and promote the buildings, sites, and landscapes that contribute to the heritage and vitality of Connecticut's communities. For over 4 decades, we have successfully championed the protection of remarkable community assets all over the state by leveraging funding, advocating, forming partnerships, and promoting stewardship. Our office is on Whitney Avenue in Hamden, listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It's shown here on the slide. Our Eli Whitney boarding house was built in 1927 and has served as Preservation Connecticut's headquarters since 1989. We have a staff of 8 preservation professionals and an active and engaged board of 21 preservationists from around the state. We are fortunate to have 2 of our trustees joining us today, Mary Jean Agostini and Deborah Cohen, who will dive into the business of selling historic properties from the perspective of the real estate professional and preservationists. The purpose of these chats is to introduce important preservation issues and to hear from you. Please feel free to use the chat feature to ask questions and ask questions directly at the end of the presentation, or feel free to contact us afterwards for a phone call or a site visit. So with that, I will turn it over to Deb and MJ, and I'd like you both to first briefly introduce yourselves to our audience. MJ, why don't you go first?
Hello, everybody. I'm MJ Agostini with Remax Right Choice. That's my broker that I work with. And I'm also a trustee, grateful to be a trustee with Preservation Connecticut. I've been selling real estate throughout Connecticut for over 36 years. And one of my specialties is selling historic homes. I am a former owner of a beautiful 1785 Federal Colonial, which you can see in the background. I spent 11 years renovating, and I have some stories to tell about that, as well as selling many historic houses throughout the state of Connecticut. I also teach a continuing ed class for realtors on historic valuation and preservation of historic homes. It's definitely a specialty. Not many realtors do specialize in this, but Deb and I, this is one of our niche areas. So that's a little bit about me.
And Deb?
Sure, thank you, Jane. I'm Deb Cohen. I'm with Coldwell Banker in West Hartford, and I am a little bit newer to the field of real estate. I started a couple years ago after a 25+ year career in the finance insurance industry. So over time, I've really developed a passion for homes, especially older homes. And similar to MJ, I'm very grateful to be on the board of Preservation Connecticut. We sold our 1933 home in West Hartford a couple months ago, and I'm now sitting in the study of our 1800 federal home in South Windsor. So you know, certainly some of the issues that can happen when purchasing an older home are near and dear to my heart. I also manage I'm the founder, and I manage the Instagram and Facebook social media for the Front Door Project, which has a following of over 90,000 people across the country. And actually, you know, about 25% of my base is from around the world. So I have a lot of fellow old house lovers that follow along with me.
Great, thank you both. So I'll let you take it away. When you want to advance the slide, just let me know. I am in control of the screen here.
All right, sounds good. I'll go ahead and start, and MJ are going to kind of bounce back and forth between sections here, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So I'm going to try to keep the slides moving quickly. But just wanted to give everyone online a quick overview of the Connecticut real estate market at the moment. You know, all the rumors that you've been hearing are true, that inventory across the state and actually across the country are very low. And, you know, buyers are outnumbering sellers, putting us in situations where homes are selling very quickly and with multiple offers. The COVID pandemic really pushed us into this scenario. You know, back last spring during lockdown, many people who potentially were considering selling decided to either take their homes off the market if they were already listed, or they decided to hold off. Over the course of the last year, many of those homeowners have decided to just stay put. Others would like to move, but really have no place to go. I have a number of potential sellers who want to perhaps like move into a larger home, and they're not able to do that because they can't find it. So they can't sell where they're living. So it's really kind of causing a huge backlog. There's been the interesting dynamic about the pandemic has been we've had a big influx of people from New York and Boston, and even from other parts of the country. People who are now able to work remotely, perhaps indefinitely, are choosing to move into the state, which is wonderful, but it's exacerbating the inventory problem that we have. Many of these buyers too are coming in with ready amounts of cash to be able to plunk down on a new property. And it's pushing maybe more traditional home buyers out of the market, first-time home buyers, making very challenging for them. You know, you have, you know, young people or young families who have maybe saved for 5% down, and they're just not able to compete with somebody who can either pay cash or who can put 20% down and, you know, have additional funds to, you know, cover appraisal gaps. Things are going way over asking price in many cases, which is resulting in appraisal issues. And so people need to have the cash to be able to cover that in order to purchase the property. So it's really become very challenging for many home buyers, and some are sort of choosing to sit back and maybe wait a while before re-entering the housing market. If you want to go ahead and move forward, Jane. So here are just a few statistics. These are from the full year of 2020, and this covers all of Connecticut. There will be some variation by county and by town, obviously, but these stats just support some of the things that I was just speaking about. New listings, upper left corner, are down, have continued to drop since 2016 over the last 5 years, but are down 2% in 2020 versus 2019. So fewer homes coming on the market. As a result, your inventory has continued to drop and has dropped 36% below where we were in 2019. I mean, that is a dramatic difference. So it means homes that were sitting for longer in the past are moving much more quickly now. Average sale price, again, is going up. We saw a 20% increase from 2020 over 2019. Can move forward. The trend continues in 2021. This is just for the first quarter, and this is just Hartford County, but just to show that, you know, inventory continues to be almost 50% lower than where it would traditionally be. Housing prices are continuing to go up. 18% average sales price increase in 2021 so far. I looked at Fairfield County, and I believe it was like 28%. It was even more dramatic of an increase. So things don't show signs of letting up right now. We'll see how the year continues to go. Can go ahead forward, Jane. And I just wanted to take a quick look at what we consider to be older homes, which is anything, you know, 1950 or prior, versus newer homes, to see if there's a difference in the trends there. And just looking at 2020, or excuse me, this is the time frame 2016 to 2021. The trends on the left-hand side, it's anything from 1951 and newer. On the right-hand side is anything 1950 or older. So you can really see that the trends are the same. the averages are a little bit different. Like your newer homes, our average price point has risen to just over 500,000 in 2021, whereas your average price point for your older homes is maybe about 425,000 in 2021. But you can see the trend is up. The line that you see there is number of days on market. So you can see that the number of days to sell properties has dropped dramatically. And homes are, many homes are selling in well under 30 days, and sometimes are under contract within the first 2 or 3 days in this market. So I think that gives just an overview of where we are right now. And I don't know, Jane, if we want to pause for questions or if you want to go ahead and jump into MJ's portion of the discussion.
I think we can keep going and pause for questions at the end. If someone has something they want to put in the chat, we can do those as we go along. But we'll open it up at the end.
Perfect.
Is this the right slide for you, MJ?
Yes, it is. It is.
Okay, go ahead.
So in my real estate class, we talk a lot about what are the benefits of historic homes and the limitations of historic homes. There are so many people out there that would love to own a historic house, and they see all the glitter of owning a house, but may not understand all the responsibility that comes with it. So these next 2 slides are going to just talk a little bit about what I feel from a real estate perspective, what the benefits of owning a historic home are, and then we'll talk a little bit about the limitations. Number one, you own a piece of history. These homes are finite. They're very rare to have. As the years have gone on, they've been demolished or put into disrepair. So when you get a good one and you can live in one, it's really a feat. And owning a piece of history is a very cool thing. Just knowing that you've been in a house with somebody that may have been around during the Revolution War or the Civil War or during any of the events in our history is a pretty cool thing. You could take advantage of tax credits, deductions, and grants, and of course. Jane and all the folks at Preservation Connecticut could help you out on this if these are tools that are interest to you, but there are tax credits available both on the state, local, and federal levels to help you make repairs and offset some of the costs that you do have to invest. There's even grants. They have a nice barn. I don't know if the barn grant still has any money left to it, but there's programs out there that help historic homeowners continue to maintain the house in the way that it was intended to be maintained. Location in a historic district. Of course, and Deb and I had a discussion yesterday. Of course, there's pros and cons of living in a historic district. I lived in a historic district. It was a listed district. It was a National Register listed district. And I thought it was fantastic. That was one of the reasons why I purchased my home in a historic district, because I felt it would be protected. The money I had invested would be safeguarded. And there were other like-minded people that lived in my district. So to me, living in a historic district is extremely important, not only for yourself, but just for the whole genre of where you're living. Donation of easements to charitable organizations. This is a topic that not many people are aware of. And again, Jane and her crew at Preservation can certainly help you explore this type of benefit. Being able to preserve your house in a way that you get an intrinsic benefit back, actually an actual tax credit, IRS tax credit, is a wonderful tool, and it helps especially people that phase out of the tax benefits of interest deductions and real estate tax deductions. Having this ability to donate an easement to a charitable organization not only puts dollars back into your pocket, but allows you to preserve a certain aspect of your home, whether it be a facade easement wallpaper easement, a window easement. There's all types of easements that you can do to protect the home and certainly get a financial benefit for it. And then, of course, they're fun to live in. And I put in parentheses sometimes because, of course, they have their challenges and they're certainly not like your traditional house. And, you know, I enjoyed all my time living at my house. But of course, you know, there are things that you have to deal with. So we can go on to the next slide onto limitations. So, and again, you know, you have to take the good with the, I wouldn't say the bad, but I would refer to these as limitations. And you just need to have your eyes wide open when you go into either thinking about purchasing a historic home or just, you know, living in one. They are costly to maintain and repair. Nothing you do in these homes are like a traditional home. They usually cost 2 to 3 times the cost. I was talking to Deb. I have, you can't really see it, but there's an elliptical window over my old front door. And it had it was an original elliptical window with the leaded slags and mouth blown glass. And 20 years ago, I had it restored. And back then, just to fix a few panes of glass and to repair some of the leaded soldering on it was $1,300. People are going to say, wow, you're crazy to spend that kind of money. But I thought it was, to me, it was important to try to keep the integrity of the house the best that you can. So understand that these type of repairs and maintenance are costly. Some additions are cost prohibitive. You know, central air being one of the big, used to be a luxury and now it's almost a commonplace. And Deb could probably chime in about her experience. She just added central air to her house. You can't just throw ductwork anywhere. You usually have to use a high velocity system. You have to get a specialist to come in. And of course, it's going to be more expensive than your traditional central air system. You know, we've had people come to work on our house and they've actually turned around and said, I'm sorry, I can't help you because they don't know how to price it. They don't know how to do it. It can be really challenging in that respect. Specialists and special materials, again, are usually necessary. We had, not my home, but a different property that I did sell had horsehair plaster. And it was in disrepair and they had to find somebody up in Vermont that specialized in horsehair plaster. And it took 7 or 8 months to get the gentleman to come down to do the repair. So many times you have to find specialists who deal with these special type materials. Going back to the historic districts, you know, we do get, as realtors, we get a lot of pushback on people. Some people don't want to live in a historic district because they can be restrictive. Usually you have to go before a tribunal of people, usually a historic district commission, plead your case as to why you want something changed or something added. And of course, if they don't feel like it's appropriate to do for your age of home or for the style, then you can be denied. And a lot of people obviously don't want to be told what they can or cannot do. But that goes back to, if you're truly an old house lover, then I don't think that that's really going to be, you know, high on your list of worrying about that. I think you'll embrace that. But it's still a concern for some who do decide to buy homes in historic districts. The tax credits and deductions are small in comparison to what you spend. I mean, they're a great tool, and many of the big projects, if you saw our annual meeting and saw some of the wonderful projects that were done throughout the state, used these tax credits and deductions to further their projects and make their projects possible where they may never have been able to be done. But they are small. You know, it's not going to cover your entire cost. It's there to give you incentive to do the appropriate things and get, you know, reimbursed for them. And again, lastly, you probably never recover your costs. I think I stopped counting how much money we spent on our house because it just didn't matter. You know, I did it because we loved it and we did the appropriate things. But you know, if you start to add up and you're worried about, you know, getting your money back or making money on it, then a historic house is definitely not for you. these are some of the two, well, these are the two plaques that identify historic properties throughout the state. One is, they're both issued, they're state historic preservation plaques, and the state, and SHPO, right, gives these plaques out. I think you have to pay for them, but they are, they signify if your house is a recorded property, which means it's a very important, very rare type property, like the Oliver Ellsworth house up in Windsor. That's a recorded property. Or you have a property in a recorded district, which is what my house was. So to the right, that was the plaque on a house next door to me, but it's the same plaque that we had that signified that my property was not a recorded property, but I was in a recorded historic district. So it's very proud to be able to display these plaques. And I know different historic commissions or districts around the state have their own special plaques. As you can see above that plaque to the right, that is the Worthington Ridge Historic plaque that they gave out. I think those plaques were designed in the 1970s or 1980s, and they were given to houses in the Worthington Ridge Historic District and signified with the Yankee Peddler on the left and the age of the house on the right. One of the big topics, and of course, Deb, you can chime in on this as well. One of the other topics that you have to be concerned about when if you're thinking about buying an older house or just living in an older house, there are so many more home inspection issues and maintenance issues that you have to be aware of. And again, going into buying a house, you can't be the faint of heart. You know, these homes are, you know, you have to be a hardy soul to own one of these homes, just because of the type of things that can come up. And these are some of the items that we look for when we're selling historic houses, what the home inspectors are going to identify. And, you know, you're going to find these issues in other older houses, but they are specifically many times present in historic homes, and it's how we deal with them. Number one is asbestos. My house was loaded with asbestos, the insulation, because I had a steam heat system, not a hot water system, but a steam system. And so all those pipes needed to be insulated, and asbestos was a wonderful product to insulate pipes in the 1920s and 30s. And that's when central heat was put in my house in the 1920s. So there I had all the asbestos siding. We had a professional company come out and wrap it and professionally encapsulate it, but you can also have it removed professionally as well. Another hot topic is lead-based paint and, of course, lead-based plumbing. In the old days, when I first bought my house in 1996, you can just go out there and start chipping away at the lead paint and it would fall to the ground and you do your own cleanup. And now it's a big ordeal to paint or restore the exterior of your home because you have lead-based paint. You have to apply to this, I believe, I'm not sure what body of Connecticut, but there's it's probably part of DEEP, and your painter needs to be certified in doing this type of work. And you know, they come in with their like white suits on and have to contain the lead-based chips that come out so that they don't fall into the ground and pollute the ground. Underground storage tanks are another hot topic, and I had one in my house too. Many of these tanks were installed in the early 1900s, and back about 20 years ago, there was money from the state of Connecticut to help homeowners remove these tanks. That you could have gotten a grant up to about $1,500 back then. Now there's no money available for that, but there was a big push to pull these tanks out and make sure that there was no contamination. So underground storage tanks are definitely huge. Water in the basement, people need to understand you're always going to have water in your basement, or for the most part with older homes, they're not a solid concrete foundation unless the foundations were changed. But most of these all have old stones and mortar and brick, and they're porous. And you can actually see in some of the basements where there's channels dug around the foundation for water collection. So if you think you're going to finish your basement off in an old house, it's probably not going to happen. Chimney liners, another big topic. Most people buy historic homes. They want to have that roaring fire at holiday dinners. And it's so important to understand, if you don't have a chimney liner, then you shouldn't be burning, because you will burn your house down. It's a big deal, and a lot of people don't know about it. Insurance companies are always the first thing that they ask when you're buying an older house is if your chimneys are lined. Electrical, most of the time we run into problems with not only fuses, but knob and tube wiring. And that's the first type of wiring that was installed in homes, was knob and tube. And the electricians are going to tell you that it's a wonderful source of electricity, but the insurance companies hate it. So most of the time when we're selling historic houses, we have to budget for removal of all the exposed knob and tube, because you'll get to just about to the end of the transaction and the insurance company will say, no way, we're not insuring this unless you get rid of the knob and tube. So we've had to do that. Pests, termites, powder post beetles, carpenter ants, carpenter bees, chestnut worms, you name it, any kind of wood destroying insect. I had them in my house. I had everything, even woodpeckers. So, these are just things that come with old houses, and you have to be cognizant of them. You're never going to get it so that it's perfect. So if you have issues with these kind of critters, again, old houses probably are not for you. But my exterminator was my friend, and he was at my house probably 2 to 3 times a year, taking care of all these type of critters. So go ahead, Jade, next slide. And then just to wrap up some of the other ones, septics and cesspools. Some of these old houses, especially if you're buying one from somebody who's had longevity. My next door neighbor actually had a chair in her house from the War of 1812. I mean, like, she was old. She was in her 90s when I bought my house. And so she had a lot of relics, but she had a cesspool in her house. Never, ever changed the septic system. And previous fires, many of these houses have had previous fires. They had fires all the time because, remember, they were cooking in kitchens inside. A lot of them didn't have those summer kitchens off the house. So you please know about previous fires. Sometimes you'll see charred beams in the attic or in the basement. Dug wells are another fun topic, because some of these houses never had drilled wells. Of course, they never had drilled wells. When they were first built, they probably didn't have, they just had the old pump well outside, and dug wells are only maybe 10 or 20 feet deep. So you have issues with bacteria, contamination you have to be concerned about. Of course, and mold and vermiculite are a couple other ones. And Deb also wanted me to mention too, with old houses, they're never square. I did a brand new kitchen in my house, had custom cabinets made, and the cabinet maker had a meltdown every time he would come and put cabinets in. He's like, nothing's square in this house. And I'm like, of course not. It's been here for 270 years. It's just not going to be square. Your floors are not level, your walls are not level, but that's really just the patina of the old house. These are a couple of home inspectors that we locally use, Beacon Inspection and Tiger. They have folks on staff that are fluent in historic home inspections. So even if you wanted to do one for your own edification, it's also interesting to give them a call for maybe $500 or $600. You can have them come through your house. They'll spend probably 3 or 4 hours in your house and telling you everything, obviously what's wrong with it, but things to manage and to maintain, so that when you do go to sell your home down the road, you're prepared for that inevitable home inspection. Deb, I think you're up.
Yes, I am. So just a little segue here. You're not buying a house, you're buying a lifestyle, as MJ pointed out, there's a lot of different things to take into consideration. I mean, I think the big thing for me, I mean, as a real estate agent, especially if I'm working on the listing side, if I'm going to be listing a historic home, it's incumbent on me as the real estate agent to really do my best to prepare my seller for the inspection process and to try to get them to address any of these potential concerns ahead of time. I mean, there's certain things that are part and parcel of owning a whole older home, you know, ongoing maintenance and so forth. But there are certain things that, if at all possible, really should be remediated before putting a house on the market, because it's just going to help the seller to avoid issues during the purchasing process. On the buy side, if I have a client who is interested in purchasing a historic home, I mean, they're typically, you know, a unique person. You know, not everyone wants that, and people won't be shy about really telling you, you know, I'm not up for the challenge of an older home. And then you have the buyer who that's really what they're looking for. And then I think it's especially if you're dealing with first-time home buyers, it's incumbent on me as their agent to start to educate them on some of the things that we should look for. You know, as we're going through the house, I'll point things out to them, not in an effort to frighten them, but just more to educate and to let them know that, you know, the construction that used to be used is different than what was used today. So it was actually my very first home sale ever. I was representing the buyers, and we purchased a 1768 federal home in Farmington, Connecticut. And my clients had owned a home, multiple homes before, but only new construction. They had never owned anything other than a new home. And so I had to educate them on knob and tube wiring, on asbestos. You know, we ended up, fortunately, with sellers who were happy to remediate those kinds of issues that we came across. Not every seller is willing or able to do that. But so I just think that as real estate agents, we have a big part of the process to try to help make these transactions go as smoothly as possible, because historic homes really are so wonderful. And, you know, as we talk about marketing them, I'll get into some of those things. If you want to go ahead and go forward, Jane. So I think when we're representing a property and the sellers of a property, we really want to focus on all that is wonderful about living in a historic home, the craftsmanship, the unique architectural features, perhaps the neighborhood that the home is in, you know, whether it's in a historic district and has kind of the surrounding neighborhood that really adds to its value. We want to make sure that we're using professional photos, professional video, and we're capturing really the unique details of the home with close-ups as appropriate. I mean, I feel that most real estate listings, you have a photographer come in the room, they just use the wide angle lens. And I think many times the special features of these older homes can be lost in that. And so I think as agents, it's important for us to capture that. If history is available, share that in a listing description or attach a supplement to kind of outline the history and make a point of discussing it, make a point of talking about, you know, the beautiful heart pine floors, the unique custom moldings, the, you know, 4 fireplaces that exist in the house. You know, really treat the age of the home and the style of the architecture as an asset and not a liability. If the home is in a local historic district or has some other type of designation, I think it's very important to make that clear to buyers, and for, you know, hopefully buyers agents to be able to explain to potential buyers, what does that mean if you live in a local historic district, you know, as far as the processes that you may have to go through to make changes on your home. You really want to, in addition to focusing on the great benefits of historic homes, you also want to highlight things that maybe have been done over the years to modernize it. I mean, as MJ said, you can do things to historic homes to accommodate modern living. We are adding air conditioning to our home, and it's, you know, it's not inexpensive, but compared to regular air conditioning, I don't consider it to be that much more expensive. You know, the technology has come a long way, and we're installing high velocity air conditioning that hopefully a future owner will benefit from. You know, our laundry is on the first floor. It's not in the basement. That's something that people really like. Has a mudroom been added? Has a kitchen been renovated? Highlight those sorts of things. And you should always include a full list of repairs and maintenance and or a full list of upgrades as a supplement to the listing, so that real estate agents can share those with your buyers, because buyers are going to feel much better going into any home, whether it's historic or not, knowing that it's been well maintained over the years. You can go forward, Jane. And then just in terms of marketing, you know, your marketing for a historic home is a little bit different than you might market a traditional home. A traditional home is going to go onto the MLS. It's going to go feed all of the other websites, Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, etc. All of those same things are going to happen with historic homes as well. But I'd say the old house buyer, you know, lives in a few different places where you're able to maybe attract attention to your listing. There are many websites right now that really cater to old house lovers, such as circaoldhouses.com and oldhouses.com. For what I consider to be a very modest fee, you can promote your listing on their website for 3 months or longer. You can make it a featured listing, and many of those websites will also feature your listing on their social media. You know, they have significant followings on Instagram, on Facebook. And so to the extent you're able to get your listing in front of that very specific population of old house lovers, it can have a big impact. Utilize your own social media to promote the listing. Use old house oriented hashtags to expose it to the old house community. There's a huge community of people out there. And these buyers, they range from, you know, younger people who are really more intent on, you know, green living and look at living in an older home as a form of sustainability. You have, you know, more artistic types that just really love the aesthetics of an older home and the craftsmanship, you know, others who just love the history. So there's ways to really hone in on those populations of people. Similarly, on Facebook, there's old house Facebook groups. If you join those, and oftentimes you're able to promote your listing there. If you have a really unique property, maybe with very extraordinary architecture or very significant history associated with it, you can often get your listing featured in an article, whether it be in Yankee Magazine or in the New York Times or in the Hartford Courant. Make those connections and try to just get it in front of as many people as possible. Right now, listings aren't lingering for very long, but if your listing does linger, you can try other means, such as your traditional open house, but maybe with a twist, having somebody there who's going to speak about the home's history or be on site to talk about the architecture, to maybe pique the interest of buyers who wouldn't otherwise take a look at it. So those are just a few ways that I think you can go about marketing historic homes. I'm sure there's more, but those are the ones that come to mind right now. I think that's it for me.
Okay, we just wanted to highlight again, going back to one of the benefits of owning a historic house are the two tools, or it's a one tool, but with two types of easements that you can put on your home to preserve an important feature of that home forever, in perpetuity, and still receive a tax benefit. The historic preservation easement is, again, it's a restriction that prohibits certain physical changes in a historic property based on the property's condition at the time the easement was acquired or immediately after the proposed restoration. So in its purpose is to assure that that feature stays intact, again, in perpetuity. I had the Wesley Sloper house for sale in New Britain many, many years ago. And there was I think we do have a slide on it. There's a wallpaper easement on that property. It's changed hands a couple of times, but the wallpaper easement allowed, that wallpaper was original wallpaper that there it is. The Sloper, Mr. Sloper, had put into the property, and it had stayed there. There's only been 3 owners of that house since it was built in 1860, I believe. No, 1830, I think. And that easement was put on by the Sloper Wesley family to preserve it. So it's pretty cool to know that and it's properly labeled. Currently, that building is was owned by the Polish Orchestra of New Britain. I believe it still is. So it's in the hands of a nonprofit organization. And having these easements, whoever the easement was donated to, and Jane, if you want to go back to the details of the preservation easement, that little flow chart, you can see, the details of the preservation easement. What the owner's doing is he gave away the right to change that wallpaper to a qualified recipient, such as Preservation Connecticut, in exchange for a federal charitable tax deduction up to 30% of your adjusted gross income. And again, I'm not a tax accountant, and tax laws change like the wind changes. So always, contact your accountant for the exact numbers, because the IRS changes their numbers too. But you do that. So the Wesley Sloper family donated that easement for removing the wallpaper to a nonprofit organization. An appraisal was required to document the before and after values. So you have to get a certified, licensed, most like an MAI appraiser, which is the highest level of appraisers that are that's on the historic register allows. And they have records. You can't easily find what an easement is worth. I mean, what is that wallpaper easement worth? Very hard to find unless you have an appraiser that keeps all this data from doing these over and over again. The property has to be listed on the National Register or part of a listed historic district. You have to be able to open up the property to the public one day a year, so that the person or the organization that got the donation can go in and inspect it and make sure it's still there. Obviously, you have to uphold to all the Secretary of Interior standards. And this easement is recorded in the land record, so it's there forever. It can never be changed. That wallpaper over time, will start to fade or will start to go into disrepair. And it's up to the owner of the property at that time to make sure that that wallpaper is maintained in the proper way. Okay. This is just an example, the circa 1860 Tudor Place in Georgetown, DC. It's a National Historic Landmark. Is protected by an easement covering the building and the grounds. And the easement was granted to the U.S. Department of Interior by a direct descendant of that family. And you can see the photo of it on the left-hand side. Okay, you can skip down. Conservation easement. The other way that we can protect historic property is many times homes or farms have acreages that is ripe for subdivision. In order to protect the landscape, it could be acreages for development. It could be a specific tree. I had a home out in Bristol, Connecticut, one of the Ingram homes, the Plaques family. We had a very rare copper beech that was 180 or 190 years old that has a conservation easement on it. And again, this is the restriction that limits the use of that property and keeps the use for only preservation, conservation, or wildlife habitat. And its purpose is to ensure that historic scenic open space, the tree stays in existence, and that is not destructed. It's not cut down or removed for any reason. These are the details of the conservation easement. Again, prohibits subdivision of land or cutting down of trees or altering landscapes or taking away stone walls. The owner must keep the land natural. An appraisal is required, again, like the historic preservation easement, to document before and after values. You have to use a certified appraiser. And again, prohibits new development, timber cutting, and changes to the landscape. Even something like adding a pool could be a no-no under that conservation easement. So, you know, they're very powerful tools. They're tools to protect, but yet they do limit. And there is, you know, everyone, the real estate community doesn't want to talk about it, but you know, you may have some diminishing values of a home that does have a historic preservation or conservation easement on it, by virtue of, because you may cut a lot of people out of the buying pool. I don't feel as though that it's a detriment, because I'm on the historic positive end of it. But if you have a home, I think if you click to the next slide, Jane, there is a farm up in Simsbury that, oh, there's the Copper Beech, just to show you. That's the Copper Beech in front of the Ingram house. Stunning. It's a stunning house. Or a stunning tree. Keep going to the next slide after this one. Okay, this is the Tolmeadow farm up in West Simsbury. And this gentleman, this was his family farm, owned it for 249 years. Simsbury Land Trust purchased the development rights. I forget how many acres. There was hundreds of acres to it, and it was ripe for a subdivision. I mean, the developers couldn't get their hands on that piece of property fast enough, but he was true preservationist, and wanted to preserve the family farming legacy. They were able to preserve the property without cutting it up. They're still able to farm the property, and the Simsbury Land Trust was the recipient of that preservation easement. So happy ending for all in that situation, because that property, how many times do we see it, Deb? The houses with lots of old houses out in the country with lots of acreage just get all cut up. And really, to me, that's the diminishing value, is when you do something like that to it. These are appraising easements. As I said, you have to have a direct comparison with other easements. They're very hard to find, and only appraisers that are well versed in doing this are the ones that you would hire to do it. And you appraise the property before and after the easement, and the difference is the easement value. And there's a percentage of that you can take, that the IRS will allow you to take. They used to allow you to take it all in 1 year. So it was a very powerful credit against your ordinary income for 1 year. But now I believe it's spread out over a certain time period. And it's, again, based on your adjusted gross income. But check with your accountant. And again, these are just showing you the value of the property as a whole, and you can use any of those methods to appraise those easements. You can keep going after that slide. Those are just the three approaches: the cost approach, the sales approach, and the income approach. And that's it for easements.
Great. Thank you, Deb and MJ, so much. It's good for potential buyers of historic properties to go into it with open eyes and know what the benefits are and what the obligations are. And it's really important for folks to be able to work with, you know, trained realtors like you two to help them understand the full landscape of what they're getting involved in. And, you know, Preservation Connecticut has so many services to also assist potential homeowners with how to be good stewards of historic properties. We have a circuit rider program. So our circuit riders will make site visits to any homeowner who would like to meet with one of our circuit riders to see, to get guidance on what some of the issues, the maintenance issues are with their home. Sometimes controlling costs is just a matter of being able to phase out repair projects and maintenance projects in a strategic way. making sure you're getting good guidance from contractors and consultants, knowing if there are tax credits that are available to you, and knowing if you're in a local historic district and being able to work with the local historic district commission. Preservation Connecticut offers trainings for commissioners, but also residents of local historic districts, so they understand what some of the restrictions are. And generally the restrictions are just making changes to the exterior that is visible from a public way. So if you understand that going into it, before you get too involved in a project or your hopes on something that you want to do, it's good to chat with Preservation Connecticut or your local historic district commission to see where the restrictions may lie. And also with easements. Preservation Connecticut holds about 40 easements on historic properties. And I would say that generally the folks that are interested in donating a preservation easement truly have a historic reason for doing it. It's been in their family for generations. They don't want to see development or anything come to the property. And the only way to ensure that as a property owner today, to ensure that it's going to be maintained into the future, is a preservation easement. And with Preservation Connecticut, there are you have to make a donation to Preservation Connecticut because we will be responsible for enforcing that easement in perpetuity. But with that enforcement also comes a built-in partnership with the future owners, so that we're making annual visits, talking with the owners of the property, helping them with maintenance issues, scheduling things out, talking about any potential funding sources, just being a true partner in the stewardship of that property. So although some of the challenges that come with owning historic properties may seem steep, Preservation Connecticut is here to try to minimize those and be a partner in helping you navigate some of those decisions. And we also keep a directory of preservation contractors and consultants that we can help you connect with any contractor that you need. We provide trainings. If you have a lot of historic windows to maintain, we provide trainings. So as the property owner, you could either, plan to make some of those repairs yourself, or you could be more informed on how to hire someone because you understand what the process is in maintaining a historic window. So we're here to help navigate some of these challenges. And like MJ and Deb both said, there's no greater reward than owning a historic property. That's really where your passion is. And I know a lot of you out there feel the same way, that you just can't beat a historic property. They are beautiful and, just offer so much more than a brand new building, which also will need maintenance. So don't kid yourself that a new building or replacement windows are not going to need maintenance. Everything needs maintenance. So with that, I'll open it up to some questions or comments. If you'd like to just ask anything, you can unmute yourself. I can't really see everybody, so unmute yourself and go ahead.
Jane, it's Deb. I think there's a couple questions in the chat as well.
Let's see.
7.
Lost the chat.
So we have, I'll go ahead and
Okay.
The first question, Gabby from Edinburgh, is this Scotland? I thank you for the talk. I'm curious to know, to what extent does sustainability play as a benefit of buying and living in historic homes? Does this come into conversation at all? Here in Edinburgh, sustainable historic city management is high on the agenda, and we try to encourage homeowners to maintain their historic homes as a means of acting sustainably. And the Edinburgh World Heritage Trust offers grants to help make this happen. I would say it's not in the conversation as much as it should be. I think that in recent years, it's started to come into the conversation a little bit more as it being, good for the environment, basically, to maintain our historic structures. Jane, I don't know if you want to comment on that, or MJ specifically, but I do think it's starting to enter the consciousness here. It's not as, it doesn't sound like anywhere near as much as where you're living.
I think one of the premises is when we sell these type of properties or talking to homeowners that own them, they're doing sustainability just by default. You know, when you have to replace a chestnut board or a mouth blown glass window, you're not going to Home Depot or Lowe's to find that. You're going to the salvage yards. There are, you know, people that specialize in taking down old houses, and they harvest all the parts of them and then resell them. So as historic homeowners, I remember we hunted Stamford house wrecking in Stamford, Connecticut, and board and beam up in Litchfield, Connecticut. We got our hardwood floors, our wide board floors from them. So I think historic homeowners just practice sustainability by default because you just can't get those products at your local hardware store.
Another question in the chat is, what is the profile of an old house buyer? Are people in their 30s interested in old houses?
This is Deb. I would say absolutely. I mean, I think the old house buyer profile can really run the gamut. I mean, you know, my husband and I are in our 50s, and we just bought a very old house. Some might say we're crazy at our age to start going down this path, but we were just really excited to do it. But I do have a couple sets of clients right now, actually, who are specifically looking at older homes. And, you know, they love the notion of, you know, moving into something with character, with history. And, you know, I think fortunately our younger generation is also more interested in sustainability. And I think that's going to hopefully factor into their decisions to purchase older homes.
Great, thanks, Deb. Well, I know we're looking forward to getting back out in the field a little more post-COVID. We had been doing some open house talks and partnering with real estate agents to do some of those more creative open houses that you suggested, Deb, where we could have local historians and Preservation Connecticut staff available to talk with anyone interested in the house if they wanted to come through just in an informal way and talk about the historic features of the house, talk about, you know, what does it mean to be listed on the National Register or the State Register, easements. So we're always available to have those conversations and plan those programs. And, you know, it's a matter of just making sure people are, you know, feel comfortable that they know who to go to for advice and get the information that they need to make a good decision about what they're purchasing.
I think there is one more question, if we want to tackle that real quick.
Yep. Go ahead, Deb.
So this is from Margaret. She just graduated from a real estate course, yay. And historic designations were never mentioned once, boo. And having gone through a course myself, I don't recall that they were mentioned there either. You know, I'm obviously aware of them because it's an interest of mine, but I do think it's an issue, as Margaret points out, that sometimes somebody is buying a designated property and they don't even know it. You know, I used to sit on the West Hartford Historic District Commission. We had 3 local historic districts, and on occasion we would have a buyer come in upset that they had to come and present a project they wanted to do on their own property because they had no idea when they bought the home that it was in a designated local historic district. So I really think it's incumbent upon, you know, real estate agents to be informed, be educated, and make sure that they're readily providing those materials and including that information on the listing as well.
That's why the plaques are so great. If there's a plaque on the building, it's pretty clear that it's got a designation or a nice sign welcoming you to the historic district in a community just to make sure it's clear when buildings are listed.
Yeah, and I think sometimes too, a house may have a plaque, but it's not necessarily in a local historic district or designated as a local, like a locally identified property. So, you know, there's different levels, I guess, of protection that are there. And so when somebody is, an agent is listing a home, especially, and or an agent representing a buyer, it's really important that they understand exactly what that means for that particular property.
Also to note, the town clerk is in charge of having a list of all the historically designated properties in each of the towns. So if anyone ever had a question whether their house is either a listed property, a recorded property, and part of a district, the town clerk would have those records. And we always check those when we go out to get the information on a home.
Well, Deb and MJ, thank you both so much for sharing your expertise with us today. I'm sure there will be more questions that come up. So folks, you're welcome to contact Preservation Connecticut, contact@cttrust.org for any questions, and I can connect you with MJ or Deb or any staff at Preservation Connecticut to assist you. I'd like to thank our sponsor for today, Hoops, Morgenthaler, Rausch, and Scaramoza. You've been looking at this slide for a while to remind me to thank those very generous sponsors. We really appreciate that. And also to encourage everyone, please remember, we are a membership organization, and it's through the member support that we're able to bring programs. So again, visit preservationct.org to become a member. Thank you all so much for being with us. We do have the slide deck available because we do have some resources at the end here that you may find useful and revisiting the discussion. And thanks so much, MJ and Deb, and everyone. We hope we'll see you next week for a preservation discussion about historic lighthouses. So I'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.